Alright, so I've been on these Shimano XT 4-pot brakes. So I've got the lever and rotor and caliper, obviously. Finned brake pads, which they say rattle a fair bit, but I don't think these are rattling. I haven't really noticed these rattling. Maybe it's the older pads that rattle, but they've been okay. The discs have been good. I went back and forth before I went with the Shimano brakes. I just did the discs, and I did the Sram 200 180 setup, and then swapped straight over to the XT Ice Tex. Now I think I noticed a little bit of difference, but it's not really. I think long term, I don't think there's any difference. I don't think there's. The difference is, or there is difference, but for performance, I don't think there's a lot of difference there. Just rotors alone. But the Sram rotor is thicker for sure. It feels thicker. Yeah, you've got less lever throw when you swap the pads over. So XT, you got adjustment here, which is lever in and out, obviously. And this little sucker here, this free stroke adjustment, a lot of people say the free stroke doesn't do anything, which it does little, but it does help. So if you wind that out, so it says free stroke there. If you wind that out to probably 3 or 4 turns out, it no longer has any effect. You can keep going, it won't have any effect. It's only the last few turns in where it affects it. So if you want to take a little bit of that free play away, you just roll it all the way until it stops spinning. If you want a little bit more free play, you roll it out a bit and you'll get more and more free play. But it's not a lot, it's very little. So it's not like the Sram, the Code RSC with the dial, that gives you a fair bit. But saying that, the RSC, all the videos online with bleeding them have got you winding the adjustment the opposite way to where you should, in order to have adjustment as your brake pad wears out. So they've got you bleeding it, so the adjustment, I've already gone through this, but they've got you bleeding it with the adjustment where as soon as your brake pad starts to wear out, you've got no more adjustment. You're already all the way at that adjustment. So you've got to go the opposite of what they say in their official bleed video to get your Sram Code RSC tickety-boo and fully adjustable. So calipers, the power, if we're talking power, regardless of rotors, the XT versus the RSC definitely has more power, more bite, more power. Now, is it in the design of the brakes or the calipers or anything like that? I think a lot of the power comes from the brake pad. I think most of the power comes from the brake pad. So the organic, these come with organics which feel killer. The organics feel absolutely killer. I've still got organic in the back, but I've got a sintered in the front. And sure, it's a little more powerful, but they got to be warm. They got to be warm. They do suffer from the same as the Shram sintered pads or metallic pads. They have to be warm in order to get full bite, whereas the organics bite hard all the time, but they don't have as much full-on power. So you could go either way because the power's in abundance if it's organic or metal, but I'd assume you'd go through organic pads a fair bit quicker. Now, the one thing I don't like about these brakes, I've been high on these brakes ever since I started testing them. I've ran a couple of different e-bikes with the XT brakes and just absolutely impressed. Having them on my bike and having them long term, so it's April now, I put these on. I put the rear one on in October. So it's a good 6 or 7 months with the rear one, good 6 months of the rear one. And the front I put on in December. So December. So I've been Shimano front and back for 4 months now. So I've had a good chance to kind of feel the nuances and see if something disappears or anything like that. A lot of people talk about the wandering bite point on these things. Now bleed them properly and that wandering bite point goes away for a period and then it starts to creep back up again. So I don't know whether I haven't executed the bleed properly, but I've bled these a couple of times. So I bled the rear one as soon as I put it on, and I bled the front one after a little while. So Oh no, I would have bled it straight away because I cut this line pretty short. So I would have bled that one straight away as well. And I've bled them both since once. And now, just now, I'm starting to get the wandering bite point again. So best way to know if you've got the wandering bite point, put your bike upside down, grab your lever, and then pump it a couple of times. And if it comes up, then it's got the wandering bite point. It's got a bit of air in the system or something. And if it doesn't change as you're pumping it, then it's completely free of air. So, but the wandering bite point doesn't bother me too much. I can handle it. I mean, it's not ideal. I'd prefer the Sram RSC for the consistency of the bite point. Once you get the bleed right, the bleed is crucial on the RSC, on every brake, same. But what I really don't like is this back brake. When I'm going hard and the bike's dusty and I'm braking through a descending turn, it clacks. It's like crack, 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 crack. And it kind of sounds like it's a like something's going on in the frame. You don't know at the start. So it brought me back to when I tested the Pivot Firebird back in the day. Like it was, I think it was a 2019 or a 2018 Pivot Firebird. 29er red, and that thing clapped like hell. I actually gave it back to the guy because I said I can't test it. It's whatever it's doing, it sounds like it's going to break. So going back to that sound, it's exactly the same sound. So now I know that it's these brakes that are making the sound. It's these brakes that are doing the clack, 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 clack. And it's more so, or it's almost exclusively when I'm turning right, not when I'm turning left. And it only does it when the bike's dusty. When the bike's clean, it's sometimes it'll do it, but it's very subtle. It's almost like it needs a little bit of dust in this. And what it is when you put the brakes on, I can't really do it and film it at the same time, but when it's dusty, it's kind of not doing it now. It's a little bit dusty, but it's not too bad. But it's like crack, 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 as you're going around the corner on the brake, and it's just horrible. It's definitely a sound that kills your confidence in you. If you don't know where the sound's coming from, you're like, oh god, I've just broken something, or the bike's braking. So I don't like that at all, and I never noticed it before on these short term, riding a bike. I suppose it's because I keep these demo bikes, these bikes that I test clean. I'll ride it, take it home, clean it, ride it again, just so it's always clean, so I can pick up everything that's wrong with it. If I see something, I stop straight away. So my own bike, I usually keep it pretty clean, but long term, you see these things appear. So that's the letdown of these brakes. If that didn't exist, this would be my brake for sure. These would be my brake. So I don't know whether that's eliminated on the Saint brake or the Z brake, but if it's not, if it's the same setup and having the same issue with it's the pistons in here moving slightly in there. So as you're braking, it's like it's I don't know exactly what it is, but it's something to do with the pistons interfacing with the pads and then moving as the braking happens, and you're taking hits while you're braking. So bumpy corners, bumpy right-handers is where it does. Bumpy descending right-handers when I'm on the brakes. Now I know you guys will be going, all the bros out there will be going, just get off the brakes, man. Just get off the brakes, bro. Like, you'll be fine. But righto. It doesn't always, it's not always functional. So, brakes are killer. The power is absolutely excellent. Consistency is almost flawless, except for this long term. Once you've ridden it a heap, you start to get this a little bit of wandering bite point, but it's not bad. Haven't never failed on me. They've never let me down. The power's always there. It's always consistent. The Sram pad versus the Shimano pad. The Sram pads have always been like little, like, oh, have I got something on my pads? And then they warm up and then they're strong again. And they burn real easy. They overheat quite easily. I've overheated codes a couple of times, but I've never overheated these. I've never had these fade out on me. So I think it's pad material. I think a lot of it is to do with pad material. So XT's killer, absolutely killer. Love them, but one letdown is that clacking at the back, which I almost can't deal with. So we'll see where I go in the future on my next bike. I'm still stewing up whether I leave the XTs on here and buy some RSC levers and just put my Kodar calipers with my RSC levers that came on these. This bike came with Kodars, so I can nick the Kodar levers off and run the Kodar RSC levers with the same caliper, with that Kodar caliper, which is the same caliper as the RSC as far as I know. So yeah, I'm still stewing up which one to run, but I think I'm going to lean back to the Code just because of that clapping. I can't have it. I don't want it. Maybe it'll be remedied by going a bigger disc. Maybe a 200 disc versus a 180 disc at the back could help. But I don't know. You guys tell me. What do you think? Is it something that's common and everybody kind of experiences it, or am I tripping?